second knockout game. And the bottom right in the blue, playing for Team Na'Vi now, it's Spirit.
And in the top left, as the Red Zerg player playing for Shopify Rebellion, he is Lambo. Yeah, looks like, and I'm checking the brackets, looking, I took out a Terran player Disrespect in the upper bracket qualifiers, took out Harstem 2-0, and then, well, you fall to Beyond, and I feel like when we talk about the players that we think could win a tournament, or really any tournament that they show up to, it's pretty fair, I think, Bayo, to say that Beyond is someone, even if he's not your favorite player, you have to respect the fact that if he's on, he can be unstoppable. So there's no shame in that. Lambo's got a bit of a journey to make, and Spirit, of course, here represents a great challenge for him to start off here.
Yeah, I've long considered Beyond not the best player in the world, but the best online player in the world, or at least the player that has that greatest delta, because it's well publicized, right? He's got these wrist issues, they're psychosomatic, they're stress-induced, and he is so good when he's at his home, at his own setup, and when he starts to go on stage, though, it's always a question of how long can he survive, how long can he hold up, and the good news for Beyond fans is that it seems like over the last couple tournaments, he's been able to go deeper. He's been able to get closer to that World Championship Beyond form that we used to see, where he actually was able to go and, you know, keep his stress, I guess, in check, keep the wrists all together. And we saw him play actually a really nice series against Cyril back at Atlanta, and he was actually doing a nice job. We didn't have any pauses. So good news for Beyond fans. Maybe we'll see him make a deep run in this tournament. That'll be very exciting. But for now, this is a different one. This is Lamb, or this is Spirit. We're going to see double orbital on the way, of course. The question, though, is how greedy is Spirit going to be? Is this 3cc play? Does he have something a little bit more aggressive? I got to assume here on Golden Aura, Nate, that this is going to be that 3cc, maybe even a quick fourth base play. It's so turtled up.
He's already got SCVs pulled off of the double gas, so he's not mining the full amount of Vespine he could be getting. He's getting just a couple extra bucks, so that's going to allow him to, I assume, go for the quick third command center and also be able to make his Hellions early. If you try to play the thing that we always talk about, especially when it comes to players that can do unorthodox strategies, is that they are usually also comfortable if you try to do something unorthodox to them, because they get into a lot of atypical game states. So if things aren't going, according to the meta or standard schmandard, sometimes a player can get really frustrated or thrown off by that. Some guys excel in those straight up games, but I don't think you try anything super tricky here, because again, that is Lambo's wheelhouse. He's the guy, he's the cerebral type of player that kind of figures stuff out. So I don't think you're going to weird him out too much. Maybe he tries to just play really greedy. We see the crazy fast third CC, maybe not quite as fast as Mara's yesterday. I don't know 100%, but pretty fast regardless. I've taken that game straight up. That just seems like the way that Spirit likes to play.
Nate, it's not a quick third base. It's a quick fourth base.
Oh my. I feel like I'm watching one of my own replays now. Hot damn. There you go. It's got that. Well, even as someone who does this, I don't think I can typically ever justify it, but maybe this is the legendary I don't want you to be able to attack my third planetary. No, I just assume he just wants a lot of money. This is the cash money. But okay, so think about it this way. If you're Lambo, what do you think when you fly your Overlord and see that? As a Zerg player, Bayo, what goes through your mind? You just, some level of frustration, or you're like, I wish I could do something about this, but I know that I can't. So it's like, what is he trying to bait him? What's going through your mind?
I think it's like, I gotta bust this, but I don't know that I can because it's Golden Aura. And I think Lambo's actually approach, I kind of like it. I don't know if this is where he's going for just yet. We gotta, actually, I probably isn't, because if we track the gas, he's only on single gas. He's not adding more. But my answer would be, hey, you're getting 4 command centers. That means your Marines, your Stim, everything else is going to be supremely slow. Why don't I get Aspire? Mutas, I can dance around your 3 bases. That is maybe, or I can dance around your 4 bases because Spirit's been super greedy. Maybe that's going to be the option, because clearly attacking up this ramp or, into this choke with a bunch of roaches is not going to be the solution. Not like there's a ton of space in the main base. There's this like one hidden spot that you could maybe get a Nidus in, but it's not like a Nidus is a really good option here. So you just go and I guess the other option is you get as greedy as possible. You get this 4th base a little bit quicker than you would have But it is that awkward thing, and I know I've gotten some flack for saying this, but like Zerg doesn't have good all-ins, so not against Terran. So what is okay? It's gonna be the Spire.
No, that's the reason why everyone loves TVZ so much, is because you can pretty much always get a macro game. If the Terran doesn't proxy Reaper, it's very you don't. I mean, on the ladder, some people will still try, but in pro level play, you almost never see anyone try one of those 1 or 1.5 base pushes. They don't exist at this level. I couldn't agree more with you, Bayo.
They're just not good. But Aspire getting all this gas, and again, this is your 4 base Aspire play, so you do get your gases a little bit later. But because again, yes, Stim is done, Combat Shield's not done, 1-1 is not done. Spirit committed so much money to getting these bases early on. It means that he's not going to be aggressive. He's not going to move out with a bunch of stimmed bio because it just doesn't really exist, not for a while. It means you can get these mutas out. You can get 10 mutas on the other side. And then if we take a look at this base setup, so there are 3 mineral lines, give or take, that are exposed to, by the way, this was a 4th orbital, by the way. So not only is this 4 base, it's 4 orbital, which is
the cash money build. That's what this is from Spirit.
Yeah, but if you look at this, so there are 3 mineral lines exposed to the dead airspace. Another one that you kind of dive around and it's like half exposed. If you're a Zerg player and you're like, I want to get a lot of economic damage done, the base setup here, how it looks, is actually really nice. It gives you this opportunity to go get the damage done. But again, you do have to sustain this first Terran bio push, which realistically, Nate, not all that scary. It's just creep clearing. There is a tank getting something done, but as long as you stay on creep, this is going to be fine for Lambo.
Lambo has so much stuff. The only thing about his style that he's done in this game that could maybe end up coming back to bite him a bit is his evolution chambers, right? He didn't focus on the upgrade super fast. He's just starting his 1-1 as 2-2 is beginning for Spirit. That being said, Spirit, he was pretty greedy with his setup, so it works out anyway because Lambo has so many more units that I don't think it matters at all. I don't see any way this army of Spirit can push through. The moment he tries to go across that line of sight blocker, he's in trouble. So this gives Lambo the opportunity that you just mentioned because there's no turrets, there's no defenses. So he flies in, kills a siege tank. He's okay trading a few of his mutas out here too, but he knows that Spirit can't really do anything else because the moment he tries to step on creep to counterattack, that's when the Banelings smash you. And this is kind of like, it feels weird to say throwback, but this is like the old days of TVZ. What people love to watch and see is that Mutaling Bane, and he just has this huge Bane ball waiting. And if the Terran ever gets frustrated into trying to base trade, they're screwed. But until then, the mutas just pick away as much as they can, and he's continuing to add mutas, so it's kind of exciting. Lambo gives us a Mutaling Bane versus Bio game to start us off today.
This is Mutaling Bane versus Bio is why I fell in love with StarCraft in the first place.
I think that's why a lot of us. It's good stuff.
Oh yeah, Scarlet Bomber game is back in the day, just creme de la creme. Although
back.
The downside with this is mutas are on a much bigger timer than they used to be because once you get ghosts out, the ghosts snipe down mutas, they do bonus damage to light you. They're more part of a composition. So there was a time you'd say, wow, we can go battle mutas, like get crazy upgrades, +2, get armor upgrades, and like build 30 mutas and keep them alive the entire game. That's not as much of a thing anymore. Ghost Academy's already done here for Spirit. There is this timing where, mutas are getting a lot done. They're pinning the Terran back. But also the Terran is pinned back on 4 bases. So, you win some, you lose some on that front. And again, these mutas will eventually time out. Ghosts will be out. Thors are going to be out enough number where it becomes very hard for these mutas to get what they want done. And also realistically, they're not as good. They don't allow you to go take the Terran army out. So you are going to want to trade these out at some point. And the question is whether they're going to get enough damage done before you have to get rid of them.
Yeah, and Lambo's just now moving into the hive. So if we think about where he goes from here, assuming that his mutas are doing what he feels they need to be doing, what is that next step? Because as you said, Thor's coming out into the map. They absolutely Shrek mutas. They do very well with the Marines. They provide a buffer to keep Banelings away from the bio, but also ghosts with the steady targeting are going to have a field day with any mutalisks that are in range of them as well. So it becomes very frustrating. Lambo is going to try and backstab into the main base with the mutas, however, just going for that huge flock. He has 25 of them. Does not want to engage the Marines just yet, but what he's doing here, he's keeping the Terran at home. And what has Lambo done with all that time? Bayo, he's taken all the bases on his half of the map. He's got the gold, he's got the top right corner, and he's basically saying to Spirit, yeah, you want to play this turtle fest and maybe make it hard for me to kill you? Sure, but you're going to have access to far fewer resources over the course of this game than I will.
Yeah, you know, you say that, and that is also very true because you have the gold base. But you know, realistically, of the two diagonal bases, the gold base gives you that economic injection, that shot of adrenaline that allows you to go and start to really build up your mineral income. But this is the base that matters more because, well, a gold base, yes, it does go and give you that more money or that quicker mining rate, but it doesn't have as many minerals in the bank in the first place. So if Lambo aligns a little bit on that, Spirit takes more, that's gonna be great. But for now, Lambo just says, I got banelings, I'm gonna try to bust through, and he does bust through some of the static defense, but doesn't get any of the ghosts, doesn't get any of the workers. And again, we're in this setup where Muta, Ling, Bane does time out as the game goes later. The quality of the Terran army gets even stronger. And yeah, you know, Spirit doesn't have the gold base, doesn't have the northeast base. And I do like what Lambo's done, by the way. He's pulled, it's only 7 workers. I'd really like to see him saturate the entire thing. But even still, Spirit's on 5 bases. And as a Zerg player, if you want to avoid this late game turtle, you want to keep the Terran on 4. So now Spirit, he's got this planetary, he's got missile turrets and sensor towers, and is just extremely well set up to hold on to this 5th. And that is, again, Lambo's gonna have to find a slightly different option. As this, once you get the 5th base, it's really hard to just go break the Terran.
Yeah, what he's got going for him at least a little bit here with some of the banelings he's trying to trade, trying to pull the mutas away from those ghosts on the outside, is he's denying this space, so he does take away 2 of the geysers that he's been mining for quite a while. But it's like that trap that you're talking about. So we have to consider again, what is the transition? What is his next step out of this that he's prepared for? Before, he was still getting the hive. Now he has the Ultralisk Cavern, Chitinous Plating is on the way, and then he'll also get Anabolic Synthesis. Adrenal Glands, I think, just finished up, and he's getting the rest of his upgrades on the ground. So I think what he's angling for is maybe there's going to be a couple of little more ugly trades like that, since he has these resources to work with. But that's kind of what these games versus Terran turn into, right? Because the cost efficiency of this composition is so good for Spirit that on Lambo's part, yes, you have access to all this income, but that doesn't mean you want to throw all your gas units away, because we see it happen time and time again. But that is where the win condition comes from the other player. It's not even necessarily starve the Zerg out. It's just make them spend all their gas trying to kill you, and then once they can only make Zerglings, yeah, the game's pretty much over, you know? Just for Marines versus just Zerglings always goes in Terran favor. So he's like, I'm gonna happily sit here, take as much time as I need. And I think that is something that people who watch Spirit, and since they've played so many games against each other, Lambo is obviously aware. Spirit feels zero pressure to go out on the map beyond whatever he thinks he needs to do, which I assume at this point is just keep the creep off his front door. But this mini map is looking real nice for Lambo. That's all I'm gonna say.
It is, and it does feel bad to lose orbitals, by the way. That was the nascent planetary that goes down, but Spirit's lost orbitals to banelings at this point in the game, and that really shouldn't happen. So Spirit had 5 bases, that was great. Now that he struggles to kind of hold on to this 3rd base that he took, life becomes a little bit more complicated. And I want to really talk about what I like what Lambo's doing here. I said, you know, I really want to see Lambo go and actually fully saturate these external bases. He didn't do that on the corner base, but he's doing that on Spirit's, what should be his 6th.
Yeah, he took the base outside. He took the base across from Spirit's main. On one hand, it's like, should he stop building mutas at some point? Should we see him try a transition? I'm like, he has a lot of money. He doesn't have enough money to remax multiple times. So it's worth pointing out that there isn't possibility that he overextends, because as much damage as much stuff as we've seen blow up, Spirit still has a huge army. He's got a ton of tanks, he's got Thors, he's got his Liberators, a bunch of ghosts, a ton of ghosts and Marines. It's just, how many armies worth is Lambo going to be able to either shut down or throw away before he can either break him or starve himself out, right? So as long as he doesn't do that, he should be fine. The Mutalisks are going to come back over towards the main base once again. There are 27 of them, and there's just nothing here to defend. And this right here is the ideal end game for the Muta style anyway, is that the Terran feels like, well, all I'm going to do is just chase Mutas in my own base while he mines out the map, or I try to go out on the field. And when you go out on the field, that's when the banelings are waiting for you.
And a bunch of queens. This is not where you want to be, queens. This is, I mean, you know what? They can be forgiven. Look at the creep spread. It is. A wise man once said,
"It's like a nice Zerglon." That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, there we go. Like, why? You know, like if the creep is on the Terran 3rd, it's probably the Zerg's gonna win the game. But this is late game TVZ, right? I'm not totally convinced about that fact in this game. But I love how much utility, and I guess part of it is the ghost nerf. The snipes do a little bit less damage. They have that max lease range where it's not the immediate death, right? It's not the guaranteed death once snipe goes down.
If he reacts fast enough with the mutas, he can dodge the snipe now. So that's basically the biggest thing with it. So if you're Spirit, you want the ghosts to be far enough ahead that they can't run away, but not too far ahead that banelings can reach them, because we have to remember as well, any damage will also cancel that. So it's like for Spirit, his win condition is to just make this efficient composition and his smaller bank last infinitely, and then just starve Lambo out. But I mean, Lambo's quite literally got like 60 or 70% almost, it feels like, of the bases on this map to leverage against him. So I don't know. Maybe if he lands this nuke, it'll be a start. There's a lot of Lings and Bangers running over to it. I think he's gonna find it just before it pops. So we almost got to see it. We almost had it yesterday, our first big nuke drop, but it wasn't meant to be.
No, Solar's not playing this game, so you know it's not going to happen.
Solar versus Mario. Even if like it's impossible bracket-wise, we just need to be like, guys, can we put them in that Texas show match or whatever against each other in the mod? Let them nuke them there. Whatever it takes, make it happen.
The funny thing is, it's not just Solar. I mean, we talked about the Katowice Solar Mario, but it happened to him like 3 months later against Oliveira.
Too many times.
It's like, this is happening far too often. This should not be a thing. And by the way, so Spirit, I understand, take the gold base down, sure, fine. I don't like the decision to, I mean, Lings are going to run in here as well, so it's even hard to make that happen. But I don't like the decision to go and try to take the gold base, because, I mean, look at this. There's 700, 2,400 minerals left on this base. Not a lot of gas either. Well, I guess the gas actually hasn't been fully mined, but the majority of the base's mineral is gone, right? It's not as efficient of a base as it used to be. Now Lings get on top of these tanks. The base is dead anyways because they're like 40 mutas. And it's like, yeah, you know what, Spirit, if you're going to contest a base, this is the base you got to contest, right? This is the one you care about.
It's such a, I don't know. It's like, on one hand, we have seen Terrans win in this situation far more times than should be possible. So I can't count them out. On the other hand, what an absolutely sad view if you just look at Spirit's vision of the map. It is just an endless labyrinth of darkness. He hasn't even seen half the map that's been covered in creep. He has snuck a ghost, and he still had that ghost inside of the main base, but he is going to lose it now. So he was trying to do some fancy stuff with his nukes, but he just couldn't make it happen. When the creep is at your front door like this, going past the range of your turrets, it's hard. It's hard to come up with something exciting about what Spirit is going to do, because he's more or less just hoping to get an insane volley of snipes on all the mutas, and then hope, I guess, that Lambo builds the wrong unit with whatever he decides to remax with. But that, again, that would imply that he's going to lose all of the mutas instantly to ghosts, which, you know, Lambo's done a pretty good job of avoiding that happening so far. So I'm feeling confident that that's not going to be the case.
So it's really a game of attrition is what Spirit's looking to do, to make sure that he trades so much better that even if he mines the base last, it's fine because he's traded that much better. The problem is one base is worth, what is like 24,000 resources total, I think, something like that. So if you take one from your opponent and they don't have it, it's 48,000 resources total delta. Like, you need to out-trade in a significant way if you're just going to give the map up like this. I mean, that's real. Look at these Liberators shredding the mutas. Nate, it has been a long time since we saw Liberators as an answer to mutas in the air based on nerfs that have happened, but that was a lot of mutas going down. And before this fight, I was going to say, hey, Spirit's not trading well enough. It's only about a 6,000 resources loss differential. Now it's up to 9. That was a little bit better, and because of this trade, because of the Zerg remax time, he should be able to go break this map down. But the scans aren't where they need to be, so these creep tubers are still going to be there for a time being.
Yeah, this is
knock that down.
We had a great nickname for a Terran player who had ungodly levels of patience way back in the day. This is the Spoon Terran, because it was like being just slowly carving chunks out of you with the spoon, just taking the map little bit by bit. And I feel like we can see those chunks just from these the sensor towers. he's inching forward across the map with his sensor towers and his bases. The mutas are going to be able to smash those down in the bottom left. Planetary is under repair. Ghosts are going to try to go and save it. I think they should be able to. It is quite a few ghosts, and the Planetary is building armor, so it's a little bit chonky to deal with. He does clean up the right side base of Lambo, and again, it is just bizarre. But this is what Spirit's play is to do, is to just do this as slowly as it takes. And even though Lambo had all those bases, this is where it starts to work against you, because you get used to having that income. But then there's actually just no more gas geysers on the map. So he still has some fresh ones in the northeast corner. and he hasn't even started mining the gas in the top center map, so he still has a good amount to work with. But it's just something to keep in mind. You know, Terran with nothing but minerals can do a lot, especially with bio. Zerg with nothing but minerals, not so much.
Oh, that's a lot of ghosts going down to the left side. I was about to ask you, hey Nate, is there such a thing as too many ghosts? Because Spirit has 31.
This is why I hate them though. It's like it's so cumbersome. They're unbelievably strong at the same time, but you don't step them on creep either. So he, like, is there too many? I mean, no, but also yes. The more you have, the harder it is to leave your base. But the more you have, the easier it is to kill everything and win. So it really is that war of attrition, but also the test of patience. Like, if all he has to do is get Lambo to take a couple more of those adventurous dives forward, and if he gets one more base, if he gets that right side base or what's left of it, eventually, then I actually see a scenario where Lambo mines out the map and he starts to be too cautious, or has to be more cautious anyway, because he knows he won't have access to more resources. Like, I think I made some reference to this like 10 minutes ago, but I felt like kind of early on, as soon as I was like, okay, Spirit Lambo, two great macro players who are unlikely to cheese each other, this map's probably getting mined out.
Yeah, no, the question really is, it's going to come down to the gas at the end of the day, as you talked about a little bit. Another base goes down. I mean, these are 3-3 mutas. We talked. I said earlier that I don't really think that we're going to have battle mutas because of ghosts and Thors and everything else, but I mean, 3-3 mutas going in, they snipe anything. And the problem becomes, as we look at these orbitals going down, Spirit only has so much gas. Ghosts are incredibly gas expensive. Tanks, Liberators, everything you need as a late game Terran. It's reliant on gas as much as minerals. There was a time when Terrans would say, yeah, they're going to build these big gas banks because they only need minerals. That's not true here. And now, was it 3 orbitals have just gone down? A bunch of Lings are going to try to find this planetary, and that is more than enough Banelings to knock that down. So
many Banelings.
Exactly. And at this point, there's 2 gas geysers, realistically, that Spirit's mining from. This is tapped out, everything. He's got 2 gas geysers remaining. Despite everything, despite how well he's traded and everything, we're starting to hit this point where Spirit does have to go move. It does have to make something happen, because Lambo, in the last 30 seconds, has removed 90% of his relevant economy.
Yeah, and this is still a dicey situation for Lambo, because this ground army is going to be able to deal with Lings and to some degree Danes. He has a good amount of tanks, he's got a good amount of Marauders, so getting the Banelings to the Ghosts directly is still going to be a difficult task. So really, for Spirit, the big thing here, the Liberator count against the mutas. This is just something, like you said, we hardly see. Lambo's going to try and spread the mutas out, but Liberator splash damage, for anybody curious, is about the size of a Psy Storm. So even though they don't do a crazy amount of damage to air units, it hits pretty much everything in front of them. So just a little food for thought there. The Libs, when you've got like 7 or 8 of them, no matter how little damage they do, it adds up.
Yeah, there's critical mass, and I forget what it is, for Libs to one-shot me. It's like 7 Libs, I think, one-shot a muta, something like that.
Yeah, I don't do too much number crunching in my days anymore, but it's enough. I think 8 or 9 Libs is probably in that sweet spot for 1 or 2 shotting. Yeah, look how fast that drops. And that's what's the only thing that makes me nervous, because that gas we talked about, these Banelings are really all he has to stop the Ghosts. The Zerglings on their own won't do it. The mutas on their own won't do it. And he has support. He has the tanks, he has the Liberators, he has the Marines and the Marauders. So this is where maybe we do start to ask, should there have been an attempt to do something like a Nidus inside of the main base? I'm not sure, but the mutalist play has largely been neutralized just by this ridiculous number of Liberators, and it does feel bizarre because I just haven't seen Liberators fight mutas like that in a long time. Like, I remember when Maru first got him nerfed, because he would just go literally like nothing but Liberators and kill everything. But that was like 7 years ago now. So I got nothing for you.
Yeah, they've been nerfed many, many times. And Lambo, you talked about wanting to see a nuke, because this barely the drones. The drones were still dead. And that's actually super important, because the majority of bases that Lambo has, he's done a very good job, by the way, of mining outlier bases first, which is not something that we see enough Zerg players do, because eventually a Terran player, if they put their entire might into a base, they're going to take it down. They're going to be able to secure it and mine it.
Oh, look at the mutas. The mutas get absolutely shredded. Okay, so I was going to say, he just now, for the first time in this game, Lambo starts up Vipers and Corruptors. And this right here is Spirit's biggest opportunity, because Parasitic Bomb can do something to these Liberators, but the Liberators themselves, until they're out and actually have that energy, they can just go chase everything down. There's no Hydras, there's no giant swell of Queens, there's no Infestors, there's hardly even any Spore Crawlers on the map at all. So he just has to fight, he just gets chased down, and I'd be nervous if he was looking for my Overlords at that point, if they're too close together anywhere. Like, spread everything out, make sure these Liberators can't find any more value, and play very carefully with Parasitic Bomb, because... well, we're there. Spirit has taken that right side base, Bayo, and there is still about 3,000 Vespene gas there. So that's a hard time. That's a hard time for a Zerg player who's got 2 geysers in the north, and there's still about, looks like maybe 1,000 gas on the west side expansion.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think I said at one point, it's like, oh, the gas is what matters, and it is. But Spirit's also very much tapped himself out in minerals. And I do want to give a lot of credit to Lambo. Again, I was talking about this before. We were so rudely interrupted by about 20 meters evaporating. But Lambo did such a really nice job of mining the outlier bases first. So I'm, we're kind of looking around at bases, and it's like, well, with these bases going down, it's a big problem. Lambo's losing out a lot of his economy. And then you go kind of look back at his interior bases, and this is still 8 mineral patches on this interior base. This is still 7 mineral patches on the interior base. Lambo's mined so much out of these corners that now as Spirit's taking them, there's not a lot of minerals remaining. Lambo's probably mined more than half out of each one. So it's, yes, the trades have become horrendous. 21,000 resources delta. But at least Lambo has something to retreat back to. He has nearly full healthy bases ready to go.
Yeah, it's so bizarre that at one point almost every single base on this map was Lambo's, and he had this huge resource lead. But this is just what you can do. This is what you can do when you stick to this defensive style, and you have the seemingly unbreakable level of patience. I don't know. It's like waiting for the return of Odysseus. It was a long time, but hey, you hold out hope, you hold out faith, and Spirit, he is hoping to be rewarded. But there's Lings. They're in his base now. The Lings are inside of his base. Some of his production's getting ransacked. There's a few Banes in there. The Mutas and the Ultras go down and take the South Expo. The Ghosts, he looks like he's having a little bit of trouble trying to cover all the ground here. And I would love to see a Parasitic Bomb or 2 on these Liberators to shoot them away.
Well, that's actually not going to... There's a Parasitic Bomb going down now, but 1 Viper will hold. The splits aren't great, though. So there's that. Even still, this Liberator count is so insane. And I know you said, hey, look, Spirit's maybe struggling to put everything where it needs to be. That did kind of feel like the last gasp of Lambo. That felt like, oh, I got to go all in. I got to get so much damage done.
He's tapped on the Vespene now. So whatever happens next, he's not going to be able to rebuild the army he has at this point. He likely won't be able to build it again unless we just chill and nothing happens for 5 or 10 minutes. But if that's the case, then I see the top right base getting taken by Spirit in the next minute or 2. So he's a little bit stuck now. I feel like if you're watching Zerg play in general, and you get in a non-mirror and they get to this position where you've got 4,000 or 5,000 minerals and no gas, that is typically the sign that the Zerg is going to have maybe one last chance at a fight to try and turn things around. But it is not going to be easy. It is not going to be easy at all. And he can make a crazy amount of Lings behind this, but if there's still a bunch of Ghosts and Marines and tanks and all of that stuff, then Ghosts like 2-shot Lings. They're not worried about that. He's got a lot of Ghosts.
Yeah, and it's funny you said, well, okay, maybe you should have moved out of Mutas a little bit earlier. Maybe we should have seen Lambo transition a little bit more. I would have, yes, Infestors weren't Infestors got the sterile nerf in terms of their vision when they're burrowed down and making that burrowed Infestor play a little bit harder. But when you're playing against 26 Ghosts, right, it does feel like you need Infestors or something. You need more spellcasters than just the Vipers. You need more than just kind of this, I'm going to face tank with everything. That being said, Ghosts are a little bit trapped into a corner here, but the Marauders, they're going to tank for it. And even then, it takes 6 Banes to kill a Ghost, so that's not going to work out. Snipes go down. The detection's not where it needs to be, even if it's there. And the Ghosts survive. Again, Lambo will be forced back, but the army supplies, they kind of equalize.
It's tough because the army supply is coming because he's making a bunch of Lings. He's making a crazy amount of Lings, but if he spends the gas to make the Banelings, then that's it. And he can't add anything else to support this. So the rest of the units can just keep moving. And that's where I agree with you on the issue of the spellcasters, because there's nothing to really stop the tanks from advancing outside of the Mutas trying to jump on stuff. But if the Ghosts are on the tanks, then there's just not enough to split or punish the mobility. Like this run by, I love it. it's great. But if it's only happening because of the state that we're in at this point, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to give Lambo access to more resources. So that top base is gone. I think he's got some minerals coming in the bottom left, but those two Vespine geysers have about 400 total on that base. So Lambo, if he could get all the production, I love it. You know, completely unseat him, and then there's still an opportunity with the amount of creep. If he can't scan and doesn't have ravens, like, let's not pretend like there isn't still a win condition for the game. If Spirit eventually has to step in the middle of that map at some point, then I guess he's hoping for the Surround of the Century. He's got 2,000 more minerals, but it's just going to be Lings on that production tab for most of the rest of this game.
You know, Nate, I think one more, like maxing out or spending the rest of this bank on Lings might actually do it, because Spirit is totally tapped out. He's not mining, well, he's mining a little bit, but that's all going to be gone as Lings kill off the rest of these SCVs. Lambo has somewhat of a functioning economy. Lings continue to move forward, and yes, goes to two-shot, absolutely. But again, if Spirit cannot go and rebuild everything, it's a significant problem. I mean, as I say that, it goes in, and there are enough medevacs here that the Lings do go away. But if you can't reproduce everything, and now the Ghost Academies are done too, maybe there's a world where 29 workers to 6, at least there's some level of a bang for Lambo. Maybe there's a world, but this still actually looks fairly reasonable.
If a few more of the air units were alive, you almost start to think that as a base trade on the table. There's still a planetary in the bottom left. A Viper just got killed in the top. That west side base. Ghosts managed to grab that, so he lost his only Viper there. So that's going to hurt quite a bit. But yeah, if the only thing you can make is Zerglings versus Terran, it's just going to be tough. I think for Lambo's credit, he has given himself a second shot at this game through this possible base trade. We have all these buildings flying and stuff, but it's just not a lot, right? Like 4 Corruptors are just going to take forever to kill all of this. So Spirit has some time to bring some of his units back. There's nowhere to really set it though. So I think, yeah, I guess Lambo has done it though, right? Like there's just nowhere for this army to stage anymore with the number of Lings.
Oh, there's nowhere for
just barely enough, maybe.
Nowhere for it to stage, and like you just can't produce anything. So even if the Spirit has a little bit, he's got like 3 Marines in the bank, or 6 Marines in the bank, not a ton.
It's only game 1. It's only game 1. We could potentially have 4 more of these, Bayo. I'm amped up. I'm amped up. Katie got me my coffee during this game. I'm feeling it, and I'm excited that we get to cast the absolute barn burner that this series is already going to turn into. I've still no idea who's going to win. I really thought Spirit would trade much better in pretty much all of those previous fights. But he's actually bled out enough for this to be tough. Here's one thing I'll say though. Look at the Sim City of where he's landed stuff. If you try to poke into that with mass Lings, this right here is where he gets them. He just needs to create a little mini wall, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny though, because Lambo has the Eric's. You had the money to repair that. That's unfortunate. But so let's take a look at what Lambo can make right now. His tech is shattered. He's got double starport, sure, double factory, sure, no armory, no Ghost Academy, no tech labs. He can only build Marines. Even as we talked about, oh, it's going to be the gas that's the problem. He's got 3,600 gas, but there's nothing he can make with that gas. Not really.
At this point, I think his move should be to try to get as many Ravens as he can, though. I think your biggest, I really think if any, it's the only thing that he can try to generate value out of that he can retain over time. Like any other unit that he could build at this point, there's a risk of losing it. But at the very least, if he has like a defensive turret, or if you imagine if another big fight were to get forced with these Lings and you had an anti-armor missile, I don't know. It's hard. Maybe he's just squeezing out 1 or 2 Liberators though is the better play to try and hold the ground down. But it does, to me, it just seems like this. All he can do is still just going to be Ling Bane, even if he gets some more money from this base. There's no money to go into really anything else for him. He's going to get 1 Viper, so maybe that's it. Maybe he'll try to put 1 Blinding Cloud on wherever the tank is or wherever the center mass of the bio is. But just we're looking at a cursed game. Like you take a screenshot of Spirit's base right now. This is some cursed StarCraft right here.
I actually would love to see a reactor on the factory and just build a bunch of Widow mines. If you know, like, there is not enough gas on the map for Lambo. Not really. What is that? 800. He's got 1,600 gas on the map, give or take. That's about all that's left. That's not enough to really build another high-tech army. You can build some Vipers, some Spellcasters, but again, he's going to be Ling Bane. I agree with you there. And if you you turtle this up, you put Widow mines in every choke, attacking and tanks behind, if you attack into that, I mean, good luck getting your splits off. So now we're at this situation, and I think I would like to see even more minds than the Spirit's making. We're in this situation now. What are the odds this turns into a draw? The players still have money.
I was gonna say, I'm like, if hypothetically speaking, I don't think Lambo actually has anything to gain from attacking Spirit anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's not like Spirit is gonna take this army and go take another base. There is no other base, and he can't really attack into this either. And as much as it's nice that he's gotten a couple of these other units, you know, it's not like he had Widowmine upgrade from his armory. They're not going to be able to shoot and be invisible. There are some overseers here. With just the one Viper, I mean, like, imagine if he gets an abduct on that tank. Like, you just get one unit, pull back. Just be as unbelievably cautious as you can possibly be, but just try and carve. Just take that pound of flesh whenever you get the chance. But yeah, it's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. I mean, for Lambo, the win condition at this point almost is just presented as, I mean, it looks like he has enough that he should be able to break this, but it is a Terran army with a weird wall and SimCity going on, so it's just hard to say. He's got an impressive number of Zerglings at this point. Like, the supply tells a very different story than this situation, but all it takes is, like you said, 1 or 2 good Widowmine shots into that Ling mass, and you know, half of them will be gone in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and the big thing as well is that we just saw, I guess there was only one go. Ghost for a Viper, I don't know if that's worth it. But I was going to say, it's like, okay, if you can get these abducts on the Ghost, right? It's only 11 of them now. You know that Spirit can't remake them. That can be a way to make things happen. From now, Spirit has to take this base, so he's moving on the map, and that means Lambo can go for the full surround. We talked about the potential for a draw, but this is overwhelming Ling Bane on top of everything. The Sim City that we praise is this situation where Lambo, he's got his corner and there's nothing going to happen. Well, he moves out on the map, he gets fully surrounded, and this should be a Lambo victory. Yeah, 37 minutes. This
right here, those final 2-3 minutes of the game, I think demonstrate everything about what we were talking about Lambo in the beginning of the match. Is that if you get him into an uncomfortable situation, he is the kind of cerebral player that can kind of zoom out from even just the perspective of being in the game and realize there is nothing I can gain from attacking you. The best thing that can happen is you move out of your little turtle setup. Like, if Spirit keeps everything, he just wraps all those landed buildings around his army next to the command center. I think you can potentially force that draw type situation. I really felt like his army could have traded, but the moment he extended past his base to try and move up towards Lambo's expansion, it was just like, you know, Lambo just kind of recognized something that Spirit didn't, which was that the first one, the only way the only way to win that game was not to play. Like, the first person to try and make a move out of that stalemate was always going to die, because having that setup was so important. And obviously Lambo had the flank on the left as well as the north, so just I feel like there were a lot of opportunities for him to throw that one, and it got dicey towards the end, because again, Spirit's style is extremely difficult to break. But that right there is just a demonstration of, I'm in an unusual, difficult spot, and I find a way to make the best possible choice anyway and come out with the dub.
Yeah, and I love it, by the way. So we just finished game 1 of this series, and everything else is going so far ahead. They're like, okay, what's your pick for knockout bracket round 2? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, we were sitting here, and well, we need to figure out what's gonna happen with this one.
We're in the hyperbolic time chamber, okay, of Lambo versus Spirit. Again, there could be 4 more games. We'll see you guys in like 2 hours for whatever's next.
Yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen with this one.
I'm happy. We eating good, man. We eating good. We got some nice TVZ. I think for Spirit's sake, I hope we get something other than the 4 command center opening. I hope that's not too hot of a take. And yeah, but it's still fascinating to kind of see the cogs turn in real time in the players' heads, even if the game is a little more on the passive side, and see, okay, where is he trying to carve out these advantages? If Lambo gets into a similar spot in the next game, you know, do we see him throw down at Nidus Network and maybe try and put a little more oomph with some of that harass? I don't know, but I think he handled himself very well, and it can't possibly be mentally easy to play against the Terran. I'm completely fine with just never leaving my base.
Oh, and man, I had this. It's crazy. Look at this. So Lambo, unfortunately, we don't have a stat on like total resources mined over the course of the game. At one point, I talked to Ali, who makes the different observer mods, about getting that put in, but I don't think it ever got put into the extension mod that we use. But Lambo mined so much more out of that map. I don't know how much it was, but 30, 40,000 resources, whatever. And despite that, and you know, he only traded about 22,000 resources worth. And despite that, we're like 35 minutes and we're like, okay, this is a shot. You never count late game Terra now, and when you got like 40 ghosts, who cares? And it's crazy that we can get. This is the second time we've had that situation. Rainier and Cure put himself in kind of a similar spot in yesterday when he ended up losing. And I don't know. I just, after casting that Clem Cyril series or a game on Alcyone, I'm always just like, there's a chance, you know, like
it's like it's so painful because for me it's the hardest part about high level modern TVZ is that so much of the ghost is so freaking strong, but it's so bad on creep that you're like, I can make a lot of these and not be killable, but I also can't really leave my base once I have enough of them to become unkillable. So it's like, yeah, you kind of get why the Terrans gravitate towards it, but then you're like, is this really the way it should be? And I don't know. I ask myself this question often.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if that is. You know, Nate, I don't have answers for you. I would love to, but I'd rather just watch some games. And luckily, as a fan of StarCraft and as a fan of, we got ahead of ourselves. The first part of the knockout bracket was a 3-0. It was very quick. We're now going right back on schedule. Let's see if
we speed ran.
Question now is whether Spears can just drag us into these depths of insanity. I don't know. But game 2, Crimson Court, much smaller map. We're ready to go. And in the upper right, in the blue here, dragging it out to 37 minutes and giving himself every opportunity to win. Despite everything, it's Spirit.
And the man in the bottom left who was able to keep his cool in spite of, well, going up against one of the strongest turtles we've seen in this event so far. He is Lambo. But yeah, how about that though? There was, you know, on one hand, that game did end super weirdly, but can we just go back to 4 command center opening? Like what? He's just saying like, oh, Lambo's not a cheesy player, so I can just do stuff like this. But to completely give up any opportunity to harass your opponent at all and just be like, I am literally just skipping to the late game. It's kind of mind-boggling that that's even remotely viable as an option. I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy. I'm all for greedy play, but 4CC is like, that's my I've already been playing for 4 hours and I'm just gonna try doing stuff that I know won't work. You know what I mean? Like, it's just nuts. It's nuts to see him break that out and how he actually had a plan around using it and taking that base as quickly as he did.
Well, you know, Nate, the other way to look at it is he got away with 4CC play with, the mutas were annoying, but got away with 4CC very quick with really minimal damage that he took. And still he didn't win that game. So you build yourself every macro advantage.
Yeah, exactly. You're right too. He didn't get punished for it at all. He's like, I get 4 bases at the start of the game, more or less for free, double upgrades. And you know, it's like whatever it was that he was aiming to do, he was just like, I want to get to this game state, but there was no and then, right? There was no next step to that. He's like, I'm just gonna get to 4 base, double engineering base, 7 racks, whatever. I just want to get to this composition. But then there was like not too much beyond that. It's like slowly try to take out those bases next to him. And I think you made an excellent point of bringing this up with where Lambo sent his drones when he took those expansions. And I really, really like that Lambo's way of punishing it was to say, I'm going to take your bases. And then when you finally go for them, there's just going to be half as much stuff there. And it's kind of brilliant because let's face it, like you said, like, what are your options realistically if you want to cheese in this matchup? Like, it's you can either rush like 2 or 3 Ravagers, which is one of the most scoutable and counterable builds in the game, or you do some kind of crappy Ling rush that again is super easily scoutable, and generally, even if you force to cancel, it doesn't end up impacting the game too much because it costs so much to give that up. So, for the Zerg side of things, you kind of have to do some degree of macro opener. Lambo is going for 7 roaches after he takes the 3rd, so there's an opportunity for him to get aggressive here. But he doesn't have link speed. It's not like he's going to be flooding out behind that. So maybe this turns into something aggressive for him, but it doesn't necessarily need to be like a committed all-in type play either.
I kind of like this from Lambo too. So this is the 2nd game in a row where he scouted this was a CC first. So you know there's that. And you also know there's a Spirit. So likely a 3rd command center behind, which means Starport's delayed, which means Tech Lab on that theoretically is delayed, which means any sort of Banshee response, you're going to have time to get the roaches onto the other side of the map. And Spirit also The other thing I think Lambo learned from the early game in game one, he is incredibly conservative with his Reaper, not across the map whatsoever. So it takes until about 3 minutes and 50 seconds. Lambo's on, especially on Spirit's doorstep, before the roaches get scouted out.
I love this too. I love this because he gives himself the opportunity with this type of attack. He's just droning behind it, and like we mentioned with the link speed, this is annoying. This is super frustrating to deal with. He doesn't have anything established in the natural anymore. He's not mining off of it, and it's not like there's a siege tank or anything here that has the zoning capabilities to push him away. If the Cyclones get this Overlord, that will be really nice. There's not too many ways for Zerg to get vision up that ramp, so he'll have to trade. He'll have to trade a little bit more to try and get this harass done. But I feel like if he doesn't lose the Ravagers or more than like one of his roaches, then he could be pretty happy with this delay so far. But he's obviously going to want to get that supply block fixed up because he's just been trying to build drones behind this. So maybe losing the Overlord was the only somewhat frustrating part here. One Ravager does get picked though. Spirit getting some pretty good micro against this. The Viking does get killed, however. And I think once the Ravager's gone, the Marauders should make short work of the roaches. So he kind of deals with it. That also opens a bit of that supply up. And Lambo, well, it looks like he feels like he needs to build a few more roaches. I think this may be where things get a little bit dicey, right? If he's not able to do that droning behind it that he wanted to, and he goes back into army units, that larva could maybe turn into a problem.
Nate, this isn't just a little bit problematic. This is an unmitigated disaster for Lambo. Not only did he lose everything for really minimal gain, didn't even get the add-on on the factory. On top of that, that Overlord that he lost, supply blocked him for about 30 seconds. He had to go build a bunch of them. He was not prepared for it.
The timing of it was brutal. Yeah, I was like, oh, he lost the Overlord. Can he still make drones? And I see he's like got 5 in production. I'm like, oh, that's tough.
Yeah, just very much larva locked on that one. So yeah, Lambo probably is not going to die to this. It's only 3 Cyclones, only a couple Marauders. There's no concussive shell, no stim, nothing like that. But Lambo, just because of how everything has happened, has put himself pretty far behind in this game. And remember, this was 3cc triple orbital 1-1-1 setup from Spirit. Because he didn't lose a single SCV, his mining, he lost like 15 seconds of mining time, maybe. All of a sudden, I mean, he's up 13 workers on his Zerg. It's 6 minutes in.
This only works for the Zerg, and this is why we talked about why these builds aren't super great typically, because it only works for the Zerg if you delay the mining and you get crazy drones behind it. But like it works because you don't lose all the roaches and Ravagers, so that you can go home and you don't need to build army units if he counterattacks with the Hellions or a few of those Cyclones. So it's tough because on one hand it seemed like he got a little bit there and maybe he tried to take that second bite, but let's not pretend like he doesn't have quite a bit to follow it up though. This is a lot of Zerglings. The Cyclones and Marauders are not going to be good against these at all. SCVs all being pulled to try and keep the wall up together. Let's not forget that the 1-1 is on both of these engineering bases, so if he loses these, the upgrades are done too. SCVs are actually holding position to block the Zerglings from pathing in. Lambo is able to get around it, and honestly, yeah, don't chase. Take the E-base. Do you deny the Terrans 1-1 for bio this early and dislodge the natural? Suddenly, we're feeling a lot better for our Zerg boy over here.
You say that, he needs a lot more than this one. Lambo is incredibly all in off this. He lost a bunch of drones. He's not mining in the main base. He hasn't been mining the lane base for the last minute. After he lost all those drones to the Liberator, he's still down 11 workers. So this was massive. Absolutely, Nate. Knocking down supply blocking Spirit, denying +1. But there's still this third base that's been mining, and the tanks are up right now, and you have to get more. You got to dislodge this third base. You got to kill off a couple more workers, and he should be able to.
I think this is it. I feel like it's almost on the table. Yeah, the tank should be able to cover it. It's so awkward because I agree with you that like what Spirit has should be on paper able to fight this head to head, but there is a lot for what Lambo has. So he is just trying to make up for that economic discrepancy. And if to me it partially feels like we're seeing a little bit of that last game kind of come through here again, where he's like, I don't want to let you sit here.
Nate, Spirit doesn't know he's supply blocking. You look at his money going down.
He supply dropped both depots in his main, both of his main ramp depots. He had to drop too. It's brutal.
Yeah, he queued up like 6 or 7 Marines on each barracks. The money was going down, just wasn't building depots. And we talked about how bad it was, how Lambo was all in on this. He had to get more. Well, if Spirit's going to be supply blocked for a full minute and spend his money on things that are not getting himself on supply blocked, all of a sudden it's fine. Lambo's very happy with this setup now.
Well, think about it this way too now. If he gets vision up that ramp, that's a huge target. The reactor for the barracks, and then there's 2 supply dropped depots. So that's providing 16 supply each. So for Lambo, it's a little bit of a juicy target down the line, but this becomes the real test now because we've seen Lambo put on this pressure. Every time he's attacked, he's gotten something done. It's 70 drones to 29 SCVs. Everything's just laid out for him. He's got a Nidus on the way. We have Roach upgrades, Roach speed, but How well will he hold up against the first counters here? If Spirit's able to get in and blindside him, if he doesn't get the read on this, there's no overlords or anything on the bottom right. This double drop from Spirit could end up being a problem if he's not caught, if he doesn't catch any kind of awareness of it before it lands.
Yeah, you say this might be a problem, and it has to be a problem, right? At this point, he's up to 35 workers, but Spirit is in such an issue. Now, not only is it going to get him in the main base unscouted, it's a full unload into the main base unscouted. So this is a lot of damage potential that is represented. Drones are going to go down. He's going to target down the spawning pool, which is useful, but this is a roach-based comp, so doesn't matter as much as if this was Ling Bane, something like that. You're going to get more drones here, target the queen down. Roaches and Ravagers are going to arrive, but I think you still have to get more done than that. So another queen's probably going to go down. More drones are going to go down here, and this is Spirit taking advantage of the fact that Roaches and Ravagers, incredibly powerful mainland battle units.
They're not as good in low numbers against the bio, and that's where we kind of get concerned for Lambo, because again, it was 70 drones to 29 SCVs. Now it's 52 drones to 40 SCVs. And if we're comparing game states, the only thing he's really got going for him is that third command center has still not then re-landed. And as I say that, Spirit does lift it up. So it's been a brutal game. We've had some pretty big haymakers thrown across the way at each other, but that's the tough part. If you want to play Roach Ravager, you don't have the anti-air capabilities to really shut down these drops. That's maybe one of the reasons why Lambo was with likes those Mutalisks that we saw in the previous game, especially with how much airspace is on Golden Aura. But this is what we talked about wanting to see, and there's the Nidus in the back of the main, so he's at least going to try and open something up, give himself opportunities. And even though this one doesn't look like it's going to be able to do anything, he's now putting that threat out there. And I'm going to just say it, he's about to supply block Spirit pretty badly again. There's no depots in production. If he takes out that wall, okay, he does step away from it. I'm like, that wall looks real juicy, but he has to come back potentially because there's still that drop ripping apart another one of his bases.
Yeah, that was a kill on the fourth base as well, not even a cancel. So you don't even get some money back on top of this. And I think you mentioned this. Yes, Lambo got up to 70 workers. He's only on 57 right now. That is a significant problem. His money is not, it's not building into the late game. It's not building into the early game. Or into the mid game. We're not seeing him get more upgrades. We're not seeing him develop his tech more. He's all in on this idea because he thinks he can win the game with it. And I'm not disagreeing with him. This is a very powerful army compared to what Spirit has, but the supplies are lying a little bit. Roaches, Ravagers, the supply generally lies. And, well, a lot of the supply gap is in this worker lead, 49 to 60. Spirit's army, if he just kind of sits on these two bases for a little bit longer, maybe gets 2-2, cancels another base, which he looks like he's not going to target it down. Roaches are going to be able to defend it, but maybe you come back eventually. If he can keep Lambo down for just a little bit longer and get his upgrades up a little bit, there's a world where he just, Medevac's going to stay alive, just scouting.
I love this, though, because this, in a way, it's got to be kind of frustrating for the Zerg, but Spirit's like, I could just tag my Medevac on him and follow him forever if this is how we're playing it. Does start the Nidus in the main, by the way. There are 2 Marines there, so judging by the looks of things, they're going to get distracted by the Overseer, and this Worm might actually finish, but there are a lot of tanks by the Natural, so we'll just have to see what Lambo can do. Double drop inside of the main, by the way. He's targeting down the lair as Overlord Speed's researching, and that lair is toast. So his tech options for what he can build are going to be limited. He did get the Infestation Pit in the Hydralisk Den, but there's also another drop hitting the north side.
Dude, Spirit's doing it here. He kills the 4th base, or I guess the 5th base, because I think Lambo reestablished elsewhere. He kills the lair. Now loses a medevac. Some Marines are going to get left behind. That's unfortunate. But he is absolutely making this happen. He'd love to have +2 armor. I don't know if he's on single eBay. He's on double eBay. Just didn't have the money for it at the time. But he has slapped Lambo back down into the Stone Age. There's no main base here anymore. Creep, we're going to start to see, well, you got to put the creep tumors down so your tech doesn't bleed out. Lambo's functionally, well, I guess he does have the 3rd hatch. He's a 3-base Zerg against a 3-base Terran. He's down in tech just a little bit. The tanks are here. The drops are ripping him apart. And now Lambo, instead of saying, look, I'm going to control the map, I'm in a good spot, he's got to make something happen with this. So Nidus on the north side, Overseer's going to go down, Marines kind of on top of that for now. And yeah, here's the hit. Here is Lambo trying to attack him. It's a ton of Marines, though. They have +2, and Lambo just doesn't have that. He's 20 seconds out. The tank's on the high ground as well. And this is just not going to work out for Lambo whatsoever. It looks so good for him for the last 10 minutes. Ever since that Roach attack, but Spirit has just defended, counterpunched, and we are at a 1-1, man. Nate, it shows a great series.
I feel like we just had a great conversation about all the reasons why it is so hard to get value out of early attacks on a Terran. And I'm going to take this one step further and say that Spirit is kind of known for this. And probably the number one thing that Spirit like deals with when he's practicing or laddering, I have to imagine if anybody knows who he is they probably think to themselves, oh, we're going to play one of those crazy long games. I'm going to try and just chase him, knock him down. But you have to, on the other hand, then you have to recognize that Spirit has a probably an abnormally high amount of practice against people trying to avoid that game state with him too. So the fact that he's able to hold it together, even though it looked kind of dicey, he got supply blocked really hard a few times. He got knocked off his natural, 2-3 times, got knocked off the third base. Like, there were just so many things that seemed like they could have gone wrong. And instead, we just kind of get to see, well, this is why upgraded Marines beat upgraded Roaches. And because Lambo went for that opener and lost the first wave of units and then had to rebuild to defend, he was never able to get the worker advantage that he was hoping for off the back of the early aggression. And I feel like everything just kind of snowballed off of that. He tried to create some opportunities, but that's the hard part when Spirit he's not going to leave his base unless he's 100% certain he can deal with whatever Lambo counterattacks with. And that's got to be the most frustrating thing about playing against him.
Yeah, and you look at that as well. It's like, I look back at that. Lambo has a ton of advantages, makes things happen. If he didn't get supply block, and it's funny, I can't even say that because the supply block that Spirit had was far more impactful. Like, Lambo supply blocked for like 30 seconds. It wasn't great. He was kind of larva capped on what was happening when he lost the Overlord. But Spirit, for a minute, didn't quite recognize that he was supply blocked, so we didn't see any depots in production. He was just queuing up Marines in his barracks. And I clicked on one of the barracks. It was full slotted, which is not something like, if you're at a pro level, you want maybe like one set of units behind whatever's actually in production, because you want to be as efficient as possible. And he was fully tapped into it. He was just spending his money on things that weren't hitting the production tab. And that was a disaster, unmitigated disaster. It put Lambo in an incredible spot in the game. So even with that, I mean,
it's tough too, because the other thing is we talk about these supply blocks, and it's not necessarily meant to be a negative focus. They're not unforced. These weren't unforced errors. It's not like, oh, he forgot to do stuff. There was a small margin of supply available. He had some on the way, but it's like a combination of that Overlord at that time when he was trying to build stuff back home, but also that the Overlord was giving him the high ground vision for his harass. And as soon as that went down, and he made that one move up the ramp, and he lost like 1 or 2 of his Roaches. Then the Viking landed behind him, and that was the setup. Those 2 Marauders with the 3 Cyclones, if they don't clean up that first wave, if Lambo's able to retain any of that, I think he has a little bit more room to get that wave of drones out before Spirit's able to recover. So I totally agree in that there was an opportunity there, but you can just see why it's so difficult, right? It's like the Overlord is super slow. It doesn't have any defensive capabilities. If that's what you're relying on for your strategy to work, like that's the risk. That's why we say Zerg don't have that many options for that kind of aggression. And obviously, if he had done something like a Bane bust against that, it would have been a little bit worse, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, Bane busts just aren't a thing.
Yeah, that's okay. That's like your build order. If you get the box of Cracker Jacks, you're like, oh, it comes with a free gift. Oh, it's a Bane bust. It's like, well, this is completely worthless, but it's nice, I guess. I'll give this to my nephew next time I see him, I suppose.
I'd like to amend that like a little. Sometimes Darker Rain will make it work, but that's because they're Darker Rainer.
Well, okay, if it's a Korean Zerg in like the grand finals, if it's like Sue versus Innovation from years back, then you know what? F it, Roach Bane every game, whatever. I've watched. I think there've been too many times where that was the case, but it's people just seem to have been bulletproof against that stuff these days. Yeah, you just don't see it.
No, Terran build orders, you're gonna get Cyclones out or tanks out.
The fact that you can just make the 2 Cyclones off the reactor and not be blindsided by Roaches like you used to, like it completely shifts the dynamic of how the early game functions in this matchup.
It really does. I want my aggressive options back, Nate. Dang it. Please.
Hey, I've said it a million times. I'm happy to trade back to Tech Lab Cyclones because I'll still make them. I'll just have less, and it'll be more easy to overwhelm me, but then I'll have my silly long-range sniper unit back. I'm more than happy to make that deal.
You're going to go. It's like, well, and also people make them less, so you have the advantage of being one of the few operators, then you catch people off guard and it works out.
Exactly. Well, I don't want battle cruisers to be that popular because then people know how to play against them and I don't get to have fun anymore. You see, it's all a circle of life. I don't need them to be imba. They just need to be barely useful enough.
There we go. But maybe a little bit more useful here. Taking game 2, tying us up, playing an awesome game. For Na'Vi, it's Spirit.
And I'd say spawning in the top right, but he's taking his first base in the center west. He is the red Zerg player, tied 1-1. He is Lambo.
Lambo not interested in taking these games late. We've seen what happens. Game 1.
After that game 1, man, I'd just be so fed up. I'm like, he's because he knows for him, for Lambo, it's stressful. It's like not every Terran he plays will do this, right? Or will be able to stretch the game to that point. So for him, it's maybe a little more exhausting. There's maybe some level of like tilt that comes through. It's like, I don't want to play 40-minute games against a guy that's never going to leave, and I'm supposed to just crush him. So, screw it, whatever. I've got the advantage. I'm up 1-0. It's a best of 5. There's nothing really to risk here when you're up 1-0. Try to be aggro on the second game and get to match point. But now this is where Lambo he's got to be cooking something here, because to go for this type of aggression 2 games in a row after you win the long game, it feels like exactly the kind of thing that works in Spirit's favor. Like, he does this to the people that he plays because he gets that first, he either gets that first win or he doesn't, but then the opponents kind of do some sort of self-defeating stuff in the follow-up games, right? And that's something to be aware of. Is he needs to keep in mind, even as tough as that game was, that was the game he won. So it's not necessarily like, yeah, I know you don't want to be in that situation, but you beat him. You beat him at his own game. So, I just hope we don't see him, ruin what otherwise could be some great opportunities for him, because he's played some stellar macro so far. But we have this again. I guess in Proxy Ravagers. Here we go.
Yeah, Roach Warren's done. It's gonna be Proxy Roach, Proxy Ravager. But I guess the other way to look at that, Nate, is Lambo was winning that game, was massively ahead in that game for about 30 of the 37 minutes that happened. He won eventually, but you are leading from tail to tail, from soup to nuts almost the entire game, and still Spirit has a reasonable shot to win the game. So it's one of those things where you say, well, I did everything perfectly. I saw what was happening. I hard countered it. I did everything I was supposed to. And still Spirit almost won, which is not a good feeling. That's like, well, okay, am I confident I can do that 2 more times?
Without the scout, he could bop him here, though. We should mention that this is hitting ludicrously fast. There is just 1 Reaper against 3 Ravagers and a Roach, and the factory is not yet done. So we are probably going to have to see Spirit pull some SCVs. There's just nothing else. He just has workers and a Reaper, and the factory is under siege as well. So this just goes, okay, so Lambo's like, I have an even sharper attack to hit you with. And that I completely understand. Spirit, I think a great point you mentioned, by the way, in the last game, Bayo, is that he hasn't really been moving that Reaper too far out of his base. So I guess having the awareness of this proxy was just not something that he was going to have until it was too late. And I really like this for Lambo again, but I also don't expect Spirit to tap out unless it's completely 100% cooked. He actually SCV drills through the Ravagers to hold them on the ramp, so he actually does knock them down to just 1. But again, he's lost a lot. That being said, it's 15 SCVs to 17 drones, and there's still mules in the game, so there's still a little bit more work that Lambo has to do. That's always the asterisk when you kill SCVs of Terran. It's like, if you're at the same number of workers, the Terran is still making more money than you. Don't forget that. You need to get a little bit more.
Yeah, and well, this is technically 2 bases to 2 bases. Technically, right? Because there's this net. This is 2 bases to 1. That base that Lambo has that technically is on a base, it's not ever going to be a functionally mining base.
There's no drones, right?
Yeah.
It's like production. Those are basically his proxy racks, more or less, is how to think about it.
Yeah. So in this situation, it's like, yes, Lambo is getting a lot of damage done, and forcing this factory to dislodge is a massive deal. But again, he has to kill Spirit right now, at least do enough to put Spirit back into the Stone Age, and he's done a lot. He has. And actually, that's really important. He's taking the tech lab down as well, so Marauder's not really going to come out of this. Of course, Marauder's much better. Actually, not a single Marauder gets out because the barracks is dead.
He doesn't have production. He can't make anything. He's just trying to make 1 Cyclone out of that factory. So, and really, the only thing Lambo needs to do is just try to avoid the Cyclones locking onto the Ravagers while he does these pokes. He's actually just going to dive on top of it, recognizing there's just not enough support there. That bunker getting smashed. He's got no SCVs mining anymore. All of them have been pulled off the line to try and defend against this. So we're down to 12 workers against 17 drones. And while Spirit may have felt he had an opportunity to rebuild if he could just hold the door, there ain't no door anymore. It's caved in. The arch around the door has been open. It looks like the Kool-Aid man opened the wall here. That's Yeah, that's how I'm going to describe Spirit's base. He has been Kool-Aid manned here by Lambo, and I think if you're Lambo playing that long first match and the cheddar not quite working in game 2, this is the confidence resetting. Like, yeah, I can smash this guy early if I want. I have this build in my pocket, and I feel like this is also a build that's known maybe a little bit as a Lambo special too. As you see a lot of people talk about those Ravager builds he has, and we get to see it work this time.
And it's one of those things, I think, where you talked about, well, the Reaper doesn't run across the map as quickly. He's extremely conservative with that. Sure, that's fair, but I think the other thing is he also kind of noticed that it's always Reaper into Reactor from Spirit.
Yes.
So
no other units, no bunker, never anything like that. No SCV scouts.
Yeah, and all that together means that Spirit, that's a free win. Spirit, I kind of believe for a second with the SCV drill that you talked about, like that looked like he might have been able to buy enough time that you get a little bit more out.
That is the move, but he needed to get a tank. Like the factory floating around that much, you called it. The fact that he dislodged the factory so many times just completely broke him, because if he gets maybe 4 Cyclones, if he just gets 1 or 2 more, he did a lot with those units, but he literally didn't make any combat units for the last, like, even though that game was 5 minutes, he didn't make any units for the last 2 minutes of it. It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal.
Is a tank the play, though? Is I guess my question there, because tanks are right.
If you can get it far enough away, like it's all about zoning. Like once you have the tank, it's like without the tank, you're trying to keep zone around the bunker, but the bunker just doesn't have it doesn't cover enough space once he's inside of your main. Like there was just so much room for him to walk around it or kind of ignore it. But if the tank is far enough behind it that he has to dive with everything to go for the tank, then you at least hope that you'll kill everything if he does get it, since he'll eat all the bunker shots, all the Cyclone shots, and maybe he biles it. But the truth be told, there's no good move in that situation if you're not scouting for stuff like that. Lambo is the kind of player who will do it, and he did it in game 2. So you can't really blame Lambo there. Like Spirit, he did it to you. He just hit you with Roach's last game. You got to be aware that he could do something like that again.
That he can, but now down a map in this series is tournament life on the line for Na'Vi. It's Spirit.
Yeah, his opponent in the Northeast, playing for Shopify Rebellion and on match point to continue his streak here at Dallas. He is Lambo. Hey, he's taking that gold from the purple gas side too, so giving himself. The last time we saw this, it kind of just turned into the other player. That was one of the PVZs we had yesterday, right? It was like, well, you kind of end up either you use the gold resources to go and supplement your early attack, or it kind of baits your opponent into being needlessly aggressive. But between you and me, I'm gonna do the thing I shouldn't do and make a prediction here that Spirit's probably not going to be too aggressive. Although I guess it'd be nice to be wrong about that.
I mean, Nate, I think you're going to be the I know it. We haven't had prediction goat on a broadcast.
It's a really
for a while,
hard one to guess, you know.
I'm actually really interested though that he's gotten CC first every game in this series. That's not weird, but he's actually taken the gold base, because this is one of those scenarios where it's against Ravagers. This can be really hard to hold. The biles, you just put Ravagers just out of tank range, they can still bile the mineral patch, and it's really hard to hold on to. And I think that's what we're going to see Lambo go for again. You don't take the rich gas like this because you're planning on playing a macro game. This setup is too abusable by the Terran, dropping on either side of the minerals into the main base. It's super vulnerable to drop pressure. But if you just run Roaches and Ravagers onto the other side of the map, it's very, very hard to deal with. And wait a minute here. Spirit didn't scout far enough. He checked the gold base. He's like, this is a 1-base Zerg. He doesn't see any gas in the main base either. He doesn't see a Roach Warren, so maybe that's enough to tell him that it's not as weird as he might think it is. But he is lacking some key information in this game.
Yeah, I was looking at his vision. He starts up his factory, has the natural finished up. He's using the factory to finish the wall off of his main base. So he's making that a little bit sturdier. Only one depot there. And he did just send the SCV. I saw in his vision anyway. I think he is going to go check the gold base from the other side now. So he'll get a little bit of that heads up. And I guess perhaps the funny part of this is, yeah, if it wasn't going to be the Roaches or the Ravagers, he's probably not anything he's super worried about either. But Lambo, Lair, and Roach Warren. So I think we're going to be able to say Lambo, he's not going to give that long game to Spirit. If Spirit can get there, then that's his win condition perhaps, even though he didn't win the one time it happened in this series. but Lambo, he's going to try and take the assertive role and kind of bully Spirit around, which I think with that reset of the last game, maybe he's got that confidence to go for it again back.
And what you got to be doing right now is we got to pay attention to where these overlords are, because this smells like a Nidus. This is not Roach and Demuta. That'd be really weird. This is a Nidus play coming out of Lambo, and there's only one overlord on the other side of the map. It's right here. It's in the natural, which sure, Dynasty's a big map, so it gives you some, if you drop it there, gives you some reinforcing potential, but nothing that's going to give him vision into the main base, into the natural. In fact, there is no secret spot. There's no spot that Spirit doesn't see in the main base, because he's got this or this third base on the way now. So, well, I said it was going to be Nidus. That, you know, it's just going to be a German taxi.
Little drop.
Ooh.
Okay, he's got the drop. Yeah, all right. Double dropper lords are on the way. Hellions are going to go poke the front of that natural. I wonder if he'll go up the ramp and maybe see it right as it finishes morphing, if that's the heads up that he gets, goes into the main, and it depends, right? I think the Hellion barely clipped it. Did he see it though? That's always the question that we ask. He's going to want to be building some cyclones and just keep everything inside of your base. Just try and catch wherever this drops and overwhelm it. But the first one is already there. 4 roaches. Actually, 2 roaches and 2 queens, so he could drop a creep tumor here, and that's, I mean, this is the kind of shenanigans that you expect from a Lambo build. He's managed to find 2 ways to make this super annoying. Not only does he push the SCVs away, but if he lifts off his base, his life becomes an unmitigated hell.
I mean, yes and no, right? Again, this is still, technically, this is a 2... Oh, Hellions on the other side. They're not getting any worker damage done. I was going to say, this is still technically a 2-base surge, so yes, it is a gold base, but it's not that bad. I mean, even though creeps, the queens are going to get taken down by the Banshee. So you're forced to lift, sure, and there's a creep tumor there.
Do like the drop micro against the Banshee with the queen. I don't know if I've ever seen that before, but you know what? Today wouldn't be a bad day for a couple firsts.
I mean, you say you're a big Cyril fanboy, so I know you've seen it, Nate. Cyril does this.
Well, not enough. Never enough.
There we go. But I like this. This is just, it's pressure from 2 sides. It's not as committed as one might otherwise expect, but Queen on the left side has been taken down. So the Banshee is kind of getting free reign there, or the Cyclone's popping out more and more. And it's funny, I looked at this, I'm like, okay, this is going to be all in from Lambo. But he does have his third base done, and he has been droning behind this a little bit. This was pressure. It could have killed him, and it could have killed Spirit. It didn't, but it did kill 13 SDVs. It did dislodge the natural. But Nate, now we ask the follow-up question. This is still 3cc Lambo. He's still going to get his third base down fairly quickly. There's just going to be a scan that's eventually going to let this golden base get taken again. And did Lambo get enough?
It's hard to say. I mean, the biggest problem here too, the Banshees can really cut this base apart. Like, on one hand, you can say that taking the base on this side is nice because you need significantly less workers to get a pretty good amount of gas income. So that is great. But now anything that wants to go between those bases to help against this, you've got to go so far. The creep spread isn't even remotely there yet. He's getting it there, but there's still about a full screen's distance just to connect the creep between the natural and where that third base is, let alone getting it to the gold. I do like this though. Look at that drop into Overlord, just putting down creep tumors outside of the base. This is some good way to establish pressure and map control against him. And he blocks it again. Oh, there's the creep tumor. He's not gonna. I don't think the creep tumor's finished, but if it does, that's just absolutely filthy. Still, nice heads up play, and he can always try and get it a little bit from the other side as well. There's just a lot of hard places to reach, especially since you know that Spirit style relies on not really moving out much. So I think specifically against Spirit, it's extra smart for Lambo to do this, just because he's not the guy going out on the map trying to clear creep all game. That's not the type of Terran player that he is.
No, and I mean, granted, we saw what happened in game 1 where the creep
he was happy to let it outside of his base the whole game.
Yeah, realistically, did that matter at the end of the day? I don't think so.
That's a good point. Spirit's like, if you can't kill me, nothing else really matters, I guess.
Yeah, okay, so we see these Banshees on the map. I would love to see Spirit just go repair them, because they have, against a bunch of roaches and just the setup that Lambo has, they really do make a big deal, but they're just going to cloak up anyways. More damage on the queens. More creep tumors are going to go down. So you talk about spreading creep. At the very least, it's not like the tumors themselves are theoretically going to be able to go in and get that much more coverage, because Banshees are theoretically going to be on top, but one does show up on the north side.
That's the upside, though, right? If the Banshees are there culling the creep tumors, then they're not poking, they're not prodding, they're not harassing, and that kind of gives Lambo a window. It's just I feel like it's just so rare to see this, and it's made this game a little more interesting, since I think we can all assume that if Lambo doesn't have some huge move to kill him soon, we are gonna go the distance here if Spirit's allowed to.
Hey, do you have your seatbelt ready to go? Like, do you have your road trip snacks?
Oh, I'm buckled in. You better believe it. You better believe it. I'm buckled in. I'm locked in. I'm dialed in. Whatever form of ready, I'm there.
You got that gamer chair ready to go? Just like,
I got my coffee. I got my water. I got my dog scratching at the door, trying to come in here because you can tell I'm stressed out by this crazy game that's going on. It's a good time.
That is a great situation to be in. Although
he's a cannon rusher though, so his opinion doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Nate, you know, how could you raise such a degenerate individual?
Man, I gotta tell you, I'm not sure if I own that dog or that dog owns me. That golden retriever, the only bigger diva than him might really be me, to be honest. I have created a monster. If you've been cannon rushed in the last 6 months by a golden retriever, I would say I apologize, but there was nothing I could do.
I mean, which is worse, right? Ravi went and he built a bot that goes and just cannon rushes. So is training a dog to cannon rush, or?
Well, you know, the evil thing about what Ravi's doing is that there's some hypothetical world where his cannon rushing AI accidentally gets like deployed Skynet style, and then we just have cannon rushing AIs everywhere, you know, and like StarCraft just becomes Terminator with that. So Fear Dragon will probably be the reverse John Connor, if you ask me, as far as long-term goes. So yeah, he's on a whole nother level. He's on a whole nother level of depravity. We love you though, Fear Dragon.
Gotcha. Now I want to talk about what's happening in this game though, because of the position that Lambo has, he's got an Ultra Cavern done. Because of everything that's been happening, he's been able to just skyrocket up to high very, very quickly. And well, okay, this is the problem we talked about, by the way, with Roaches and Ravagers. It's so hard to defend this gold base. But Spirits 2-2 is only halfway done. We don't have a Ghost Academy done, not even on the way. Just because, again, he's on mid-game right now. And if you can make that happen, if you can hit it with a bunch of Ultras, when your opponent's on 2-2 bio, it just, Ultras shred. They annihilate. A bunch of Marines are not the solution there whatsoever. Now, granted, Spirit is that Turtle Terran, but as he tries to take this 4th base, I mean, this is why a big Lingbane Ultra hit, like with Chitinous plating, as even before 2-2's done, maybe, it's going to be very hard to hold on to this planetary.
Yeah, that's the whole thing for him, right? Is eat the bases. You kind of talked about it in that first game, but it's a huge goal for Zerg if you can, when you want to break down Terrans that are doing this. For the Terran player, that 4th base feels unbelievably crucial, but that's kind of what establishes your setup for that end game. But that 5th base, it's once you have that 4 base setup, your main is kind of mining out. You've kind of muled it to death already. So whatever that 5th that he goes for, that will most likely end up being very crucial. So I think for Lambo, yeah, long term, that's where your eyes got to be. And his tech transition's nice. +2 melee's coming up. He has anabolic synthesis on the way, so the Ultralisk upgrades are almost completely ready to go. So the only thing that still feels maybe a little awkward is some of the creep spread between his bases, because he's been spreading it out on the map. But he doesn't have quite as much coverage, but it's kind of a nitpicky thing. He's otherwise played a straight-up game, but he hasn't really done enough to stop Spirit from getting to where he wants to go. And that's the whole point of Spirit's playstyle. Endure, get to the point where he can make all those ghosts and tanks, become unkillable, and then just try and wear his opponent out.
Become the rock upon which the great oceans break themselves. Although an ocean then wears the rock down and turns it into sand. So I don't really know if that.
Hey man, without that salt, without all that salt, right? The ocean would be a weird different place. Those rocks eventually got to get worn down by something. Vipers being zoned away by 2 Vikings. Couple queens will come up, but that's an absolutely crucial unit here. Lambo wants to go for a big engage on this. He does need to get the blinding clouds onto some of these tanks. It will help tremendously. He gets 1 onto 2 of them, going for the tanks in the back. The Vipers run forward and get popped, but that planetary is gone. Majority of those siege tanks still stand at the end of it, but he also gets some counter harass over at the gold base with the rest of his roaches. Gets 7 more SCVs there, and worth mentioning, enough of the gold minerals have been mined that he can move units through it now. It is no longer walled off by the resources.
Yeah, but this counterpunch from Spirit's terrifying. That was a lot. That was a great fight from Lambo, but Spirit handled him, preemptively pulled all the SCVs away. He knew the planetary was going to go down, but he also knew that he had such an incredible defensive position that
it was, I mean, that trade from Lambo was horrible. If you look at units lost, it was so much better for Spirit, especially in the gas. So yeah, he loses the planetary. He's got another base to put down right there, and he's going to get more than that. He's going to probably get 2 hatcheries, get himself sieged up a little bit more. And the Viper count is non-existent. There are no Vipers on the field right now. It's just Ling, Bane, Ultra trying to go for this round, and Spirit may have overstepped just a little bit. The tank's not properly staggered and sees the Ghost go down, so
those Ultras putting in some work. Yeah, once he gets the Ghost, I think Ghost feels so strong, but when they're out on the map and exposed like that, as soon as they start taking damage, you're like, well, all I can do is run. And then I think Lambo just had it. He had it in a great spot. The biggest concern, you pointed it out, he lost all the Vipers in the last fight, didn't have any Blinding Clouds for that. One Blinding Cloud on that center massive tanks, and he cleans that up in a very gross fashion. That being said, he still has a lot of units. I mean, if he finds this morphing planetary in the bottom, I think that's more or less, he's got a free tower sitting there. So things end up working out. I think he's made a couple Vipers. He's got 1, he's got 2 more coming out. And with the Ultralisk support, I still feel good, but there's enough choke points on this map. Like we can see some of the times he's tried to attack, there's not quite as many spaces for him to push into these bases. And just look at the space he's going for at the bottom right. Like there's really only one direct path from the outside there. And he's going to try and hit the other side as a distraction, so I don't mind that at all, but not much purchase to be found.
I'm a little worried about Spirit, though. We talk about Lambo, and Lambo is kind of struggling to remax here. I don't know if it's a larva problem, or we can take a look, but you know, it's a bit of a larva problem. Also, not a lot of gas here. Spirit hasn't started his 3-3. That is, you might argue ghosts and tanks and all of these things are maybe a little bit more important, but getting that +3 attack upgrade, that armor upgrade for your Marauder, it's a big deal.
There's what other upgrades do you really need as Terran if you're playing this style besides your bio upgrades? You know, do that. Maybe building armor for your planetaries against the Lings for the end game. But yeah, that's a good call there, Bayo. We don't have we're missing a couple of those end game upgrades as well. There's been a lot of the investments directly into the army. I was gonna say Lambo just has +2 for his Lings as well, so it's being kind of kept even-ish. But he does have +3 Carapace, so a minor advantage for the Zerg as he tries to push through this very tight choke. Blinding Clouds coming on the PF and the Siege tank, and he's just trying to get close enough to knock that down. A couple of the Ultralisks get choked up on this missile turret outside, but it does not end up mattering. He's able to break the base down. That's still a lot of Marines and Marauders. Those Ultras need to dip.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. It's like, okay, Spirit dominates that fight, if not for a run by on the north side. A bunch of Lings tried to go and knock this down, so Spirit had to go deputize over and deal with that. Even still, you look at the trade here, and it was good. It wasn't great for Spirit, but it was good for Spirit. But he does lose another base, loses some barracks, loses some production. And that's kind of what Lambo has to do, right? Continue to take more bases. He has like every base on that he can reasonably. Actually, he's technically one of these bases probably should be Spirit's. But he's taken more bases. He's developing his economy even more. But he's not at the point yet where he has this massive economy. He's got the bases, sure, but he's only on 77 drones. And look at his bank, Nate. It's not there.
Yeah, it's some of those outer bases that he's been trying to get have been pushed in pretty nicely by Spirit. He's actually going to drop that top left expansion and try to shut that down. I do think, per our previous conversation, however, there is not a lot of money banked up for Spirit either. He has a very powerful army, but we know that he's lax to step out onto the map. There's not a weirdly enough, there's like a cleared path of non-creep directly to Lambo's natural from where Spirit's army is. So yeah, I'm not going to say that he can't move through there. There would obviously be some risk, but that 5th base that we've talked about, very important to secure, because the main's mined out. That gold base is toast, and his natural is, you know, just somewhere in the realm of about 1,000 minerals left there. So securing those expansions is just so important. And if Lambo's got something nice to report back about, it's at least that he shut those down. But as you said, yeah, he doesn't have much of a bank either, but he's got a lot of Ultras and Infestors and Ravagers. The army composition is much more rounded out than in that first long game.
Yeah, on the flip side, I'm not a big fan of Spirit's composition yet. We're going to have this other attack going, but he's only on like 10 ghosts, 11 ghosts right now, which is not really, especially with these Infestors getting at it in, not really going to be enough. His Lings are going to try to find their way on the high. That's a great fungal low ground to high ground on top of the ghost.
And there's even drones attacking. There's drones attacking the SCVs, repairing the planetary. He's got Ultras in the natural. The ghosts are coming back over to protect the planetary, though, but the Adrenal Gland Lings and the main are looking annoying. He might be able to get one of the siege tanks back there, too. So Lambo goes for a big dive and clears out a lot, burns through most of his bank. He's trying to remax on as many Lings as he can behind it. Does clear out the northwest as well, and we've got ourselves a ball game here, Bayo. Spirit has killed a lot, but he has not been able to keep at a max out pace, and he's not really been able to bank up resources. So this kind of drawn out style that he's going for, he's not, doesn't look quite as untouchable as he did on Golden Aura.
No, he doesn't, but Lambo doesn't look as indomitable as he did in Golden Aura at the same time. I mean, we're 18 minutes in. I think Lambo had like a 7,000 resource mineral bank, a 4,000 gas bank. Like he had a ton of money, and now he's only on 68 workers, but we're seeing, hey, the Burrow did best is that ultimate answer to this turn late game. Now, is he able to do it with the same skill, with the same dexterity and accuracy that Cyril does?
He doesn't have neural parasite research, so I mean, the moment he unburrows to try and fungal, he's gonna get gobbled up instantly. So we'll see. Maybe that infestor's just doing a little reconnaissance. He's hoping to get back. You know, he's 2 weeks from retirement, etc. Whatever the plot is for this guy. Our little infestor who's just out there by himself by Spirit's army. He's just chilling.
Yeah, although we do see that the vision was nerfed a little bit as Vipers are clearly going to kill this base.
He's inching a little further forward here. I like this. Yeah, this standoff over at the floating command center. He's like, yeah, I can't kill you, but I could build a hatchery under you. So,
man, that'll be an option. But for now, this base with all the chaos happening, Spirit was able to kill the base on the bottom side and really didn't mind a ton. Actually, I don't think he didn't mind anything out of that. So that's the problem. And now attacking from the north side here, that fungal, that we talked about, big fungal on top of the army. But the staggered defenses of Spirit are just so layered that you got to do more than just hit like one good fungal. But oh man, this Liberator's getting so much done. And now here comes the Rejoinder. Here comes more. There are always two fights when a Terran goes. The fight when you attack into him, and the fight when he goes and attacks into you. And this second one from Spirit again does so much. And meanwhile, drop on the north side here, a bunch of Marauders and Marines, 13 drones go down. This attack on the north side, there is not enough here to defend this. Ultra's not ready, Bailey's not ready, nothing's ready, so more bases are going to go down. This drop on the north side, Spirit picks it up, and once again we see Lambo attack into it and kind of be the loser at the end of the day.
This is the toughest part about it, right? Like, if we think about the real weakness of what Lambo is doing is that no part of this army is an effective anti-air. He doesn't have mutas, he doesn't have corruptors, we don't see hydras even, and all those, you know, with how many cliffs and different changes in elevations this map has, I don't know that hydras are necessarily the answer for Dynasty, but I will say that Lambo's only option for dealing with these drops and Liberators is to just try and chase them down and bio all of them, or use the parasitic bomb, which is energy that he would probably, you know, he'd probably like to try and pick off key units or open up an avenue to attack one of those other bases. He does unburrow a few lings in the natural, distracting for a moment, gets an SCV or two, but yeah, there's just no easy way for him to deal with the air. And we don't even have like random spores out anywhere because the money's all been going into the aggression this whole game, these non-stop trades. So it's very, very tough to see how without that, yeah, there's so much harassed by Spirit has happened during these trades that I couldn't agree with you more. Both bottom right bases are gone, main's mined out, natural and gold are mined out. So Lambo really needs this northwest base badly.
Well, fundamentally, Lambo's mining off like a base and a half, so he's gonna have to break this down. May just relieve some of the pressure. And yeah, some of the blinding clouds are good, but there we go. EMPs go down. No fungals here available. Spirit doesn't win one late game, but this one a little bit shorter makes it happen. And Nate, we get to go to game 5.
They were trying to ask us. They're like, "What's the next match you want to do? Here's your options." We're like, "Guys, we're not casting another match for another hour and a half. Okay, we're locked in. We said it. We buckled in at the start of that game. If you weren't already buckled in, maybe you've got like 3 seatbelts on. I don't know how safe you like to be, but we're gonna go to a game 5 of Spirit versus Lambo, and you see these two players match up against each other, and I think that's kind of what the expectation is, right? Lambo, assertive player, very strategical. He's trying to outthink his opponent. Spirit, he's like, I'm just going to be the heaviest cement block that you are going to struggle to move. You're going to try and punch me and break your own hand. It's like, am I going to be super active? Am I going to be everywhere?
Well, he was in that last game.
No, but in that game, that was one of the first games. Lambo just we didn't have any answer for the drops and the Liberators. They just did so much damage. That was the most aggressive game I think we saw out of Spirit this series so far.
Absolutely. And you know, Nate, you're talking about, is it 3 seat belts? No, it's a 3-point harness. We're in a full racing setup here. I mean,
Okay. Oh, I like it. I like. We got. Can I get my Ricky Bobby helmet? Let's go.
Well,
I'm down. I'm game.
Actually, does that? I don't think that metaphor works,
Where's
right?
Wonder Bread? Sorry, he drove for Wonder Bread. I'll get my Wonder Bread helmet on.
Well,
we're good. We're good.
Nate, the problem is I don't even know that works because look at how slow these games go. They get great eventually, but they are slow to start.
That's true.
From Spirit side.
There's like that little, I guess after game one, like game one will truly go down as like this was the ultimate handshake into macro game, was that first game. If you guys are just tuning into this series because somebody went into a stream chat and was like, hey man, Lambo and Spirit are playing a 2-hour series, all you need to know is that game one, Spirit just straight up went 4 command centers. He just went 4 CC, all orbitals, and just, that was it. He just rushed up to 4 bases, and then we were immediately in the mass ghost phase. So I don't have too much to say beyond Lambo has tried to up the tempo of the games at the beginning since then, and we've seen twice now where it hasn't paid out. So it's just hard. It's just hard. It feels like when he had all the money to work with, he was able to get those trades where he needed, but the end of the first game was maybe so dicey that he doesn't want to get back into that exact situation either.
Yeah, it's a tough challenge. Although one might argue, Nate, if you want to go into the numbers here, the early aggression worked once, it didn't work twice, and surely that's got a 50-50 win chance. So that means that Lambo should go back. Game 5, he's going to win it all.
I'll say this, given what's happened in this series, it would be incredibly ballsy and I think confident, and in a way also awesome if Lambo tried to do like his Ravager meme again. But I think given the map that we're on, there's going to be an interesting degree of difficulty there. You have the ramp leading into the natural, unless he has some sort of like backdoor mineral opening build that he's got saved for this one. It's Amphion, by the way, for everybody watching for game 5. So that is the funky map where you have the huge natural, the mineral wall, you go down to the third, and then like half the map is just blocked off by destructible rocks otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to point out. I'm talking about, I was in the lobby, but I wasn't like, oh yeah, we have a map we should probably take into account.
I'm like, I guess the map probably is a big deal considering who's in this game, right?
Now, this is a map that is pretty good for mutas. It's a map that can be good for Nidus play. There's some kind of spots that can be hidden. But it's not a great turtley map as such. There's a really strong Terran pushing positions that you can kind of go through the left side, treat it kind of like a golden wall or something. But in general, if I'm thinking about this map, this does feel like something that maybe Lambo's a little bit happier about because it's probably a little bit harder to turtle on. Am I crazy for saying that?
I think you've got good angles. I think you've got good angles to work with on this map. Like there are enough alleyways and crevices that some of the builds that Lambo likes to do. Like if I recall correctly, he was one of the people that was kind of pushing some of those swarm host strategies. I don't know against like a bio-Terran. I don't know that could ever work. I personally don't think swarm hosts are great, but I do believe with the sentiment that if you surprise someone with them, regardless of context, if you surprise someone with swarm hosts, usually you can do something cool. But it's like, well, how many tricks are there to try when maybe we just have to go back to outplaying him in that long game, take the money, take what he's willing to give you. He's not going to be super aggressive on the map. If you're mildly defensive and super greedy, I don't see how Spirit punishes that. Lambo just needs to try to think of a way to force the fights to spread out and not take that one big engagement that Spirit's going to be looking for.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to approach it. The other way, the final thing we talked about is Amphion is just about ready to go. Amphion doesn't have a ton of bases to it, and some of those bases are their central bases, so they're kind of technically for both players. And if you're talking about kind of a turtle Terran, like a Maru style play that we see Spirit going for, that's actually really good for them because there are just less bases they have to take to dominate the map. It's a little bit harder for you to kind of expand everywhere and hoover enough resources to break it down. So we're going to have to see what exactly happens with that. Can that happen? Or will Spirit, will he move on to the next round? For now, though, Game 5 is ready to go. And in the upper left, he's playing for Na'Vi, playing these awesome late games. Incredible series. It's Spirit.
And spawning in the bottom left, the red Zerg player trying to steer this one back, playing some long games. You can see he's trying to avoid him a little bit here. He is Lambo. Yeah, I think that's it. I think the hardest part is we saw Lambo eke out the super economic, crazy long first game, and he made the right call to avoid fighting when it would have cost him the most. Like the moment where Spirit was kind of just turtled up, had all his buildings wrapped around his small army, and Lambo had nothing but lings. Like you can see in those moments, he can still make the right calls, but it's just he's got potentially a long day, you know, right? A lot long weekend ahead of him, and playing games like this are certainly the kinds of things that can be a little bit draining. But on the other hand, some of those whiffs end up being the reason why we are here on this 5th map. So the question for me is just, does Lambo try to put it all on the line again with another sort of aggressive early / mid-game-ish timing, or do we see more of that first game? I'm going to be really greedy. I'm going to prevent your smaller version of harass than normal from doing anything. I think it just, you know, it's one of those things that remains to be seen. And perhaps part of the issue is that these maps, you don't have quite that space that you did on Golden Ore for the Mutalisks, right, to do what they did. And I don't know how much of an impact that plays, but I'm sure it influences Lambo's decisions a little bit.
Yeah, it's weird if you look at this map, because you might say, oh, they're vertical. There's a ton of dead airspace. This should be good for Mutas. But it's not really, because, well, okay, so we look at the vertical space here, and then you look at these bases that Spirit, especially if you take kind of the linear third, those mineral lines are very far away from the Zerg. There's not this kind of nice area where you kind of go and get access to a mineral line immediately. You got to run through the Terran base setup to make that happen. So, well, technically, you would think Mutas would be really good here because, again, this dead airspace and all this way you can play around. There's not a lot to bounce around. You kind of easily get stuck in corners. The mineral lines are pretty close to the edges of the map, so it's not easy to escape. And that all together means that, yes, the dead airspace is there, but the geometry of the map is not incredible. But Nate, I got a question for you as we get ourselves into game 5 and wait to see what's going to develop here. Spirit went for CC first once again. Now,
yeah,
do you think he does that in game 5 if it's not Amphion, if it's not this place with a low ground ramp?
I think again it plays into Spirit does this so much that we really the safest thing to assume is that he's probably played against a lot of people that have tried to punish him for this, or he personally feels that Lambo is not the kind of player to go for, you know, like a 12 whatever. He's not going to try and specifically counter the command center first, because Spirit has probably just been in that situation enough to like have some understanding of what he needs to do. And as someone who doesn't, you know, I don't go command center first every single game, so it's hard to exactly understand how he would deal with some of those things. But I think it's, in some way, it's also kind of like a bluff that he's like, yeah, Lambo's not just going to do this thing that he wouldn't typically do versus Terran. I know how he likes to play. And perhaps this comes back into, you mentioned before this, but they've played they've something like over 140 maps against each other in their careers. So, and they're pretty even against each other. So I just imagine there's a level of mind games, but also a level of respect where it's like Lambo's probably tried to do this to him on ladder maybe, and just knows that Spirit is that annoying guy that does it because he has all these contingency plans or whatever it is.
You know, it's kind of funny. I just spent like a minute talking about how, you know, you would think this map would be good for Mutas, but because of the geometry, it's not incredible. And then Lambo says, you know what? But my opponent's going through CC. I know this is going to happen.
Thank you. Well, if you hadn't said that, then he probably wouldn't have made the Spire, okay? The law of attraction is very real. So that was the last thing that worked in the long game for Lambo. So I don't hate seeing it, even if it's going to be difficult to make work. He did a great job. We thought that he would transition out of the Mutas a lot faster than he ended up doing, and that was partially because we assumed, you know, there is a timer on it. But Spirit plays so defensively and doesn't step out to try and chase enough that until there are ghosts out there, I don't really see much of a downside for him trying to play Mutas, because it's not like Spirit just kept his Marines at home. He did do that, but it's not like that actually stopped the Mutas from dealing a lot of damage either.
No, my big question as well as we take a look at this is that there are two very different ways this game goes. All right, just based on how Spirit chooses to expand. Does he mine out this mineral wall and take this base? Or does he go and does he take the linear third? Because if he mines this base out, you know, technically the Mutas are maybe a little bit, it's kind of interesting to say, like a little better, a little bit worse, but you have this kind of triangle you can bounce around. You have this high ground, low ground that you can play around with. That's a little bit harder for the Terran to make sure that they're where they need to be. You got to go around corners and things slow down. Meanwhile, if he goes and takes this base as he is, well, yeah, sure, all three mineral lines are exposed to the same bit of dead airspace, but it's a lot easier for the Terran to go and respond to. And also the Muta rally is a little bit longer. So Spirit, he's going to take the low ground. It's a little bit more vulnerable to Lingban run-bys, things like that, but maybe a little harder for the Mutas to get the damage that they want to get done. So his 9 Mutas are on the way. Spirit does take that low ground, and he's very aware, by the way, of the potential of Mutas here. Missile turrets already in position on his production in his mineral lines. And remember, that's also the really key difference, Nate. Game 1, Spirit was not prepared at all. No missile turrets anywhere. Mutas, their first hit got like 10 workers.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. He kind of got blindsided by it. And I think you make a good point, too. He's going to be more vulnerable to ground harass. But I think for Spirit, he wants that low ground base because if this game does slow down, and by the way, we're seeing him move out. He's landed the Viking, so we're going to have... We got Bane speed only halfway done. There's not a lot of Banes, and we know if there was a weakness in the game 1 build for Lambo, the only thing we pointed out was that obviously he had the Mutas very fast, and that was nice, but his upgrades were a little bit later, so it's going to be unupgraded Ling Bane. His Bane speed should finish in time before a real engagement happens, but that little +1, a couple of those tanks, if Spirit controls this well enough, he could end up dealing a lot of damage, but Lambo's, again, he's had some good control himself throughout the majority of these fights, too, so... Not counting him out at all. Bane speed is ready, by the way, so he's trying to set up for about 3 different angles to push in on this, is what it looks like.
Nate, this is such a sick mind game. I was looking at this, and I mean, it even fooled me. I wasn't paying enough and close enough attention to the production tab. I assumed this was double eBay, but Spirit off of this 3cc type of opening, everything he wants to do, he's turned this into very much an all-in, trying to take advantage of Lambo, assuming he's going to be as greedy as he's been the last 4 games. And the Mutas, they can't fight this. Not +1, not +1 Marine here. The Banelings are on the way, but we're looking at how many even are on the map. Only 7 here. He's starting to knock down Queens, the 4th base under threat. Mutas, again, they're going to try to get these tanks, but this kind of slow push all in coming out of the Spirit. He's got to make something happen with it. The Lings and Banes are going to start to show up now, but if this works out, it's such a brilliant bit of serious planning. And the tanks, they don't go down. The Marines are still here. Lambo, he had an idea, but man, he was in a dream, and this is a nightmare.
He went from Turtle to Ninja Turtle real fast. I mean, if there's anything here, it's that we talk about how early the timing hit. The 1-1 is right there. It does finish. So Lambo kind of hits his peak strength at not necessarily an ideal time. He's going to make one last desperate attempt to throw this off. The Queens are going to have to come down and try and support these Mutas, but yeah, when you've got drones fighting Marines, that's not going to do it. Spirit reverse turn. He mind games his own play.